In 1602, a single shipment of sassafras bark leaving the Virginia coast weighed an entire ton and sold in London for its weight in gold, making it colonial America's second largest export after tobacco. Christopher Columbus reportedly knew he was approaching North America because he could smell sassafras on the wind from his ship. By 1960, the FDA had made the tree's defining compound illegal in all commercial food and drink. The ban was not about the cancer the agency cited. It was about a molecule chemists would soon use to make MDMA. Welcome to Rootkeep. The route leads back to the eastern forests of North America, around 8000 BCE. Long before the age of ships and transatlantic trade, sassafras rooted itself in the daily lives and beliefs of eastern North American peoples. Archaeological surveys trace its use back at least 10,000 years, with pollen and charred fragments recovered from ancient shell middens along the Atlantic coast. For the Cherokee, a tea brewed from bark and leaves was more than just a remedy for fevers and stomach ailments, and it was a ritual, its aroma signaling the presence of healing. Cherokee healers described the scent as a mark of the plant's power, and leaf infusions found their way into sweat lodges and wild game preparations. The Choctaw, living further south, transformed dried sassafras leaves into file powder, a culinary invention that would eventually define Louisiana gumbo. Choctaw cooks ground the leaves by hand, mixing them with cornmeal to thicken stews and bind communities in ceremonial feasts. The powder's fragrance was considered spiritually binding, its preparation an act of both nourishment and tradition. This innovation, first documented in southern indigenous kitchens, migrated into Creole cuisine as French settlers adapted the technique, but its origins remain Choctaw. Linguistically, the name itself carries the weight of this heritage. Early French explorers borrowed the Algonquian term sasank pamuk, which meant sweet bark, and passed it through Spanish as sassafras before it reached English as sassafras. During the desperate winter at Roanoke in 1588, English colonists recorded boiling sassafras leaves for a bitter broth when all other food failed. The tree stood as medicine, food, and symbol. Its knowledge passed quietly from forest edge to colonial hearth long before commerce put a price on its roots. By the early 1600s, the forests of eastern North America became a battleground for European profit and medical desperation. Martin Pring's 1603 voyage, funded by Bristol merchants, set out with a single goal: bring back as much sassafras bark as the ship could hold. Pring's journal describes goodly groves lining the coast, the trees so valuable that their aromatic roots were said to be worth their weight in gold. Back in England, apothecaries clamored for sassafras, convinced by Spanish physician Nicolas Monardes and his treatise that the root could cure syphilis, a disease ravaging Europe with no other remedy in sight. Customs ledgers from the period show sassafras shipments rising sharply. By 1610, annual exports from Virginia ranged between 20 and 35 long tons, making sassafras the second largest colonial export after tobacco. A single ton fetched £50 on the London market, a price that dwarfed timber and rivaled the most valuable medicinal botanicals. Apothecary inventories in London listed saloop, a hot drink made from sassafras root, at a premium, often outpricing ginger or sarsaparilla. The demand was so intense that colonial authorities in Virginia imposed a quota in 1626, capping exports at 30 tons per year to prevent the depletion of goodly groves. But the rush to harvest outpaced any attempt at stewardship. By the late 1620s, letters home warned of nearly exhausted stands, and the economic engine that once promised endless profit had already begun to sputter. In these decades, sassafras was not just a plant, it was a commodity at the heart of a transatlantic trade, its value driven by the hope of a cure and the relentless logic of extraction. By the late 19th century, sassafras had become as ordinary in American kitchens as flour or coffee. Its sweet, spicy aroma drifted from stovetop kettles and backyard stills, brewed into teas, tonics, and the iconic flavor of root beer. In 1875, a Philadelphia pharmacist named Charles Hyers patented his own blend, combining sassafras bark with other botanicals to create a beverage he called root tea. Hyers rebranded it for the Centennial Exposition in 1876, and soon Hyers root beer was sold in bottles and syrup packets across the country. The drink was marketed as a wholesome alternative to alcohol, perfect for the temperance movement and safe for children. By 1900, millions of bottles were sold each year, and the flavor profile, anchored by sassafras, became woven into the fabric of American life. Sassafras was not just a soda ingredient. Early editions of the United States Pharmacopoeia listed sassafras root and sassafras oil as official medicinal substances prescribed for fevers, rheumatism, and digestive troubles. Apothecaries stocked it alongside quinine and laudanum. In the South, file powder made from dried sassafras leaves became a staple thickener in gumbo, carried from Choctaw kitchens into Creole cookbooks. Grocery catalogs and household manuals from the turn of the 20th century routinely listed sassafras tea and file powder as pantry essentials. At the peak of its popularity, sassafras was everywhere, on pharmacy shelves, in family recipes, and poured over ice at soda fountains. The idea that this familiar, almost nostalgic flavor could be swept away by regulatory fiat would have seemed unthinkable to most Americans. On December 3, 1960, the Food and Drug Administration published a new rule in the Federal Register. Safrole, the aromatic oil that gave sassafras its signature flavor, was now banned from all foods and beverages in the United States. The official citation, 21 CFR 189.180, classified any product containing added safrole or sassafras oil as adulterated. The agency pointed to animal studies showing liver tumors in rats fed high doses of safrole. But the numbers behind this decision tell a different story. The original experiments used doses so high that a human would have to drink the equivalent of 32 bottles of pre-ban root beer every day to reach the same exposure. Most American families, even at the height of root beer's popularity, never came close. The FDA's calculation relied on converting rat doses to human equivalents, but critics quickly pointed out that the real-world risk looked vanishingly small. Meanwhile, other spices in American kitchens, star anise, black pepper, nutmeg, contain measurable amounts of safrole. Eurofin's laboratory testing put star anise at over 9,000 parts per million, far higher than the levels in a typical sassafras root beer. Yet these spices remained untouched by regulators. Only sassafras was swept from the shelves. The FDA's move was framed as a public health necessity, but the math behind the ban left toxicologists and food historians skeptical. Was this truly about cancer risk, or did the agency have another motive? The answer would become clearer in the years that followed, as safrole's value shifted from the soda fountain to the clandestine lab. In 1976, chemist Alexander Shulgin resynthesized MDMA using safrole as his starting material. Shulgin's notes described a clear chemical pathway. Safrole, once a flavoring in American kitchens, could be converted through a few basic reactions into the psychoactive compound that would soon be known as ecstasy. The Drug Enforcement Administration took notice. By the 1980s, safrole was officially listed as a List 1 chemical under DEA Code 8323, meaning every shipment, every barrel, was tracked and regulated as a potential precursor to illicit drugs. The logic was simple: control safrole, and you control the supply chain for MDMA. The global stakes became clear in June 2008, when authorities in Cambodia and Australia destroyed 33 metric tons of safrole-rich oil, enough to manufacture an estimated 245 million tablets of ecstasy. The operation was publicized as a triumph against international drug trafficking, but it also revealed how a tree that once flavored root beer had become entangled in the machinery of chemical enforcement. The story of sassafras was no longer just about food safety or nostalgia. It was about the intersection of historic flavor and modern narcotics control, where a kitchen staple became collateral in the war on drugs. Peer-reviewed science brings a measured perspective to the debate around sassafras. A 2015 study in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology found that aqueous extracts from sassafras root reduced inflammation in rats by 38%, a result on par with standard anti-inflammatory drugs. These extracts also showed antimicrobial activity, supporting the plant's long-standing medicinal reputation. Yet the same research cautioned that safrole, the compound responsible for both the distinctive aroma and much of the biological activity, carries dose-dependent toxicity. A 1977 toxicology review revisited the original rat studies that led to the FDA ban, concluding that typical human exposure from traditional sassafras tea falls far below the levels that caused cancer in rodents. Today, safrole remains classified as reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen, but no human cancer cases have been linked to dietary use. The evidence paints a complex picture: real pharmacological benefits, a safety record that challenges the scale of regulatory concern, but also a clear need for caution with concentrated extracts and vulnerable populations. Subscribe for more untold histories grounded in fact. Sassafras still grows wild across America, its roots largely forgotten by regulation and fear. Science now questions the panic, yet the ban's legacy endures. The real loss isn't flavor, it's memory. Subscribe for more untold histories hiding in plain sight.